everybody, I'm Alexis and I help introverts take big risks and create massive change in the world of business. I upload 3 times a week, so if that's something that you're interested in, please subscribe. In this video, I'm talking about the 10 ways that INTJs make great leaders, because I think INTJs are like those people that have this vision and it's like sailing out to discover America, and they see the vision with their NI, but then at the same time with our inferior SE, we don't know how to buy a boat or get on a boat. So I think step 1 is sometimes the hardest part, so I hope to give you some confidence and some encouragement, and then also by the end of this video to give you step 1 and help you take action. Real quick, before I get into the video, I just want to talk about the reasons why maybe you wouldn't step out and be a leader, and I think it's honestly really valid. I think a lot of people have these fears about if they step out that they're not going to be good enough and that they're going to fail, or they're too introverted, or they're too young, or they're not people-y enough, or they're not fast enough to take action, or they're too risk-averse, or you know what, you name it. Analysis paralysis, you're obsessive about your ideas, you take it personally when people don't adopt your ideas. You know, everyone has these reasons for maybe why they wouldn't want to be a leader, but I just don't want to let that stop you. I want to share a mindset shift that I had about like what I can do about my weaknesses, and then I want to talk about the 10 reasons why you as an INTJ already possess all the great abilities to be a great leader. I realized that any flaws that I have can be managed. I can use my masterminding skills, my learning skills to get better at it. I can read books about things. I read the book Super Better, and it talks about how to gamify things that are difficult for you. So there are different ways that you can gamify your life. Also, if you go to a party, you can give yourself a job. That's something that really helps me, is if I have some task or some purpose, and you can't have that if you're not taking leadership positions. You have to kind of initiate things. Otherwise, you're not going to get those jobs at parties, and you're constantly just the attendee that is just standing around doing nothing. And also, we're not as bad and as awkward as we think. You can get feedback about things and then you're all good to go. So I want to talk about the 10 things that make you a great leader. You know what? You can manage the things that you're not great at, and you can really excel at the things you're awesome at. So right now I want to talk about the 10 things that you already possess that make you a great leader and you can really leverage. I think if I had to sum up INTJ leadership in one sentence, I would probably say INTJs are great at paving new pathways, and then people will naturally follow. So with that, let's get into the 10 things that make INTJs great leaders. So the first reason why you have every reason to be confident in your leadership is that INTJs are one of the only personality types that are actually energized by doing something new. That's a big hole in the market and a great place for you to shine as a leader. According to Dario Nardi's book, The Neuroscience of Personality, where he analyzes the brains of different personality types, he talks about INTJs being one of the only ones who like new things. If you want to do a project-based thing or an ever-evolving career, that's a perfect fit for you and a great place for you to carve a new path, and other people will follow behind you. I think the second thing that already makes you a great leader is your ability to prioritize. INTJs have inferior SE, which means that we're constantly trying to conserve energy, and we also have dominant NI, which means that we have tunnel vision and we have a narrow laser focus on what we want to go after. But that means that we have great priorities and great priority setting skills. I mean, I've heard the quote, I continue to do less and less, more and more, and I think probably an INTJ would say something like that. And when you have this narrow, single-minded focus toward your goal and are able to prioritize things that really matter, you get the most done and can lead most effectively. So I think the third thing that makes you a great leader is that your ability to see the future and have a big vision for what should be accomplished with your NI, and then also the ability to set goals with your TE. And when you couple those things together, you reach big goals. And I think you can probably already see that to date in your life. And I know with our like very low down SI that it can be hard to remember and really be proud of the things that we've already done, but I just challenge you to go back into your past and remember all the things you've already accomplished. Write them down. You are a goal-getter and you have achieved so many goals, I'm confident, already in your life. I think the fourth thing that makes INTJs great leaders is that you thrive in learning. In fact, I'm sure you've read so many books and you've listened to so many podcasts and watched so many YouTube videos that you have way more knowledge than most leaders have already. I think the difference between INTJs is maybe we have a tendency, sometimes we have a hard time getting into action. So what I would challenge you to do is every time you listen to a podcast and you find it valuable, I want you to give yourself an action step. Sometimes there's a call to action at the end of a video or the end of a podcast, but sometimes there isn't. And if there isn't, I want you to give yourself your own action step so you don't get in this analysis paralysis or, you know, this cycle of just learning. Really get into TE and give some productive action to that. The next thing that makes INTJs great leaders is I think we're really great at doing things that are high leverage but are kind of behind the scenes. So some examples of things I've done are DJing. I feel like when I DJ, it really affects the culture of a room significantly without me having to expend very much energy or be front and center. I think event planning is another great example of that. You have control and planning of the event. However, you're not really doing a lot of interfacing with people. So if you can get into something like that, I think those are areas where you make a great leader and you have potential to design an entire event without having to really expend so much energy. The sixth thing that makes INTJs great leaders is that we don't care about details. Moving on. I think the next thing that gives INTJs the capacity to be great leaders is that leadership is largely just due to practice. I think sometimes INTJs can come down and have a fixed mindset and say some people are born leaders, some people are born followers. But if you flip that and you have a growth mindset and say, you know what, with practice, everyone can be a great leader and we're all just average, I think then we can really kick in our SE and we can practice and master it over the course of the long run. And then if we're just really committed to doing it and carving the path forward, I think we'll be amazing leaders. I think the eighth thing that gives INTJs the capacity to be great leaders is that we're very, very creative. And I think we spend so much time in our minds just churning through ideas and seeing what other people don't see. You know, leading with NI is a very small percentage of the population. And so when you lead with NI and you have the capacity for that creativity to see what other people aren't seeing, that definitely is a hole in the system and a place where we can come in and fill a need. I think the next thing that gives INTJs the capacity to be great leaders is that we're great with metrics and numbers. Anytime I include a checklist or I include numbers in a goal, I do great and I reach it really readily. The problem becomes when I only use FI, and sometimes I can really idealize things in FI and then it seems like I never reach my goal and like it's a carrot on the stick because FI doesn't really have a goal in mind. It's very vague and it's just like, you know, you'll be there once it seems ideal and perfect. Like even for these YouTube videos, I've created a checklist. It's about 2 pages long and I've made sure to include NI details in that TE checklist. So for example, I have points in there that say what kind of language I want to be using and also what I want the vibe to be and just kind of intangible sort of things throughout that checklist. So it's not just TE, but you know, it's really meaningful and it's got my NI vision. So that way I can just bust through the checklist and not worry about not reaching my long-term vision. And finally, the last thing that gives INTJs the capacity to be great leaders is that we're very growth oriented. We master things very quickly and so that can lead to stagnancy. And as soon as we feel like we're not learning anything new, we're out. So kind of the thing about us is that we constantly need bigger and better challenges. And that's great for a leadership position because you're constantly carving the path forward. And then like if you're an entrepreneur, you're constantly making your business better. It might seem risky to take a step out. It might seem risky. But you should think about how risky it is to not take a step out. When I got into the workforce, I just wanted a stable job, so naturally I'm kind of in the SJ workforce, which is great, it's just not really designed for me. And when I found that a lot of the really brave leaders that are stepping out and taking risks, they're not in the stable workforce, they're already entrepreneurs, so the odds of me having a job and a boss that I want to rebel against are pretty high. I think it's so important that you find a flow career. Right now I'm teaching 8th grade junior hires, and for a while I thought that was great. I was like, wow, this is pushing me out of my comfort zone, this is making me more extroverted. But the problem is that I'm using up all that extroversion at work, so that when I get home or I'm hanging out with friends, I have like no energy left. So it's really, really important, and this might seem obvious to some people, but it wasn't to me, it's really important that you find a flow career where you can really leverage your creativity and leverage your strengths so that it's actually energizing, and then when you come home, you have an abundance of energy to share with the people and do the activities that matter most to you. You know, I battle this fear of not being good enough every single time I turn on the camera and my FI tells me that I'm not ideal yet and I'm not idealized, I'm not the ideal version of me, but it's just practice. And if I give myself one goal for each video, this video I want to focus on this video I want to focus on this, then it really helps me grow. And I think as soon as you put metrics on it and as soon as you get into this SE form of practicing and really trying to master something, you really have such a capacity and have such greatness inside you that's just been waiting to come out all this time. And I know that as INTJs, we criticize ourselves so hard. We might seem judgy to other people, but we are way more judgy on ourselves. You improve on that one metric that you set for yourself each time, then you're doing it. And it can be tempting to not want to step out and fail again because last time you judged yourself so hard. But what I've started doing is every time I make a failure, I write it down. And if it's a new failure, then I'm so proud of myself, because if you're making a new failure, that means you're stepping out. And people who aren't making any new failures, they're not stepping out and taking risks. Every time I get a dislike on a video, I congratulate myself because it's only my most popular videos that get those dislikes. And I'm like, yes, I got a dislike. So there is a risk of being too introverted, not taking out and getting into step 1, which I'll talk about in a second. But I do have a couple videos that I think would be helpful for you. One, I have a video on what introverts need to hear. And the second video I have is how to get out of a loop. So both kind of deal with getting out of your comfort zones, and I think that's really important. Now, finally, let's get into taking step 1. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to just consume more knowledge, more podcasts, more YouTube videos, more books. I actually want you to put that into action. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to figure out what that path forward that you're going to carve is, and then figure out what are the 3 smallest action steps that you can take to get there. Maybe that's doing an internship, or maybe working for free for a while. Maybe that's just emailing someone. You know, the smaller the steps, the better. And if you can create a checklist, I think that that's something that would really help you. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you got to the end, you really are a learner and you are trying to just like squeeze all the juice out of today, and I think that's really awesome. If you like this video, if you really like to give it a like, feel free to subscribe. I upload 3 times a week. I talk about introverts, taking risks, business, and that sort of stuff. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.